Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lalaine Igas and I will be your reporter for the topic, the chemical basis of life. I hope that everyone is doing well in their houses and may you gonna listen and will pay attention with our discussion today. So, let's start.
Hello everyone! We are now in the lesson 2 of our anatomy and physiology. In this lesson, we will be discussing the chemical basis of life. This is a crash course in general chemistry, and I know that this is no longer new to you because we already tackled this in our previous years. This lesson, which is the chemical basis of life, will be applied in our subject anatomy and physiology. So, let's begin with what is chemistry? Chemistry is the branch of science dealing with the composition of substances and reactions among these substances. A knowledge of chemistry is essential for understanding the structure, function of animals because body functions involve chemical changes. This lesson will outline some basic chemical principles and will emphasize the relationship to as humans. So let's move on to matter. Matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. Apparently, there are 3 phases of matter. These are solids, liquids, and gases. Matter has many properties. These properties are the physical properties and the chemical properties. For physical properties, these are the different densities, the melting points, the boiling points, freezing points, and even the color or smells. For the chemical properties, that is the elements combined with each other in reactions. So let's proceed to mass and weight. Mass is the amount of matter in an object, while weight is the gravitational force acting on an object in a given mass. So if we were talking on a physics perspective, weight is equal to mass times gravity. So matter is composed of elements. Speaking of elements, this is the chemical substances that ordinary chemical reactions cannot break down into simpler units. Each element is different from one another. Each of these have unique characteristics. Currently, we have 92 naturally occurring elements. 25 of all elements are essential to our life. Some are called trace elements. 4 makes up the 96% of living matter. These are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. The remaining 3% are phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, and potassium. As you can see in the figure, oxygen covers up almost 65% in the human body. Carbon is only 18%, hydrogen is 10%, nitrogen is 3%, and the remaining elements are called the trace elements. These are the boron, chromium, cobalt, copper, fluorine, iodine, iron, manganese, tin, selenium, and the likes. So the elements in the human body has the big 4 major elements and the trace elements. Take note that trace elements are common to food and water. Some of these are required to prevent disease. Without iron, your body cannot transport oxygen, and an iodine deficiency prevents production of thyroid hormones resulting in goiter. Several chemicals are added to food for a variety of reasons. First is that it helps in preserving the food, it makes the food more nutritious, and lastly, it makes the food look better. Always remember that a well-balanced diet will provide the working body with all of the essential trace elements. Although many elements are required in only very small amounts, they still play a very important role in our body. On the other hand, atoms are the smallest parts of an element that can enter into a chemical reaction. So, element is the simplest type of matter, having unique chemical properties, while the atom is the smallest particle. Atoms are made of over 100 of subatomic particles, but only 3 are important for biological compounds. Atom consists of neutrons. The positively charged protons equals to the number of electrons. An atom is electrically neutral because the number of protons equals the number of electrons. Protons and neutrons are in the nucleus, and electrons can be represented by an element cloud around the nucleus. So we have atomic number. It is the number of protons in each atom of an element. It is also the number of electrons. Mass number is the number of protons and neutrons in each atoms. So the number of protons is the atom's atomic number. Just for example, oxygen with an 8 protons has an atomic number of 8, and carbon with 6 protons has an atomic number of 6. As you can see in the figure, we use helium as an example. The atomic number is found above its chemical symbol, and the atomic mass is usually found below the symbol. Although all atoms of an element have the same atomic number, some may differ in mass number. As I have mentioned, elements differ in their number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Helium has 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons. And carbon has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. Some may differ in mass number. The variations are what? It is the isotopes. One isotope of carbon has 8 neutrons instead of 6. So connection. Radioactive isotopes can help or harm us. Living cells cannot distinguish between isotopes of the same element, and radioactivity can be detected by instruments. When radioactive compounds are used in metabolic processes, they act as tracers. Radioactivity can be detected by an instruments. With fate of radioactive tracers, it can be monitored in living organisms. So let's proceed to compounds. Compounds are composed of 2 or more elements chemically united in fixed proportions. For example, water has 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atoms. There are many compounds that consist of only 2 elements. Table salt is an example. Sodium is metal and chloride is a poisonous gas. However, when chemically combined, an edible compound emerges. Many of the compounds in living organisms contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Interestingly, different arrangement of elements provide unique properties for each compound. We have here the chemical bonds. Occurs when outermost electrons are transferred or shared between atoms. Types of chemical bonds, we have ionic bonding and covalent bonding. So what is an ionic bond? An ionic bond are atoms gain or lose electrons in outermost shell creating a charge. A charged atom is called an ion. An example for this are sodium and chloride. So the question is, how do they form? They form because sodium tends to lose electrons while chloride tends to gain electrons. So when sodium loses 1 electron, that electron will actually go to your chloride. Chloride needs electron to become stable, and the movement of electron from sodium to chloride forms sodium chloride or your table salt. So sodium lost 1 electron and it is received by your chlorine or your chloride to form sodium chloride. Covalent, on the other hand, form when atoms share 1 or more pairs of electrons. These result to the combination of atoms called molecules. How do they differ covalent bonding from ionic bonding? An ionic bonding, there is a movement, which means an electrons move from one atom to another atom, while in covalent, they share electrons resulting to combination of atoms called molecules. We have mentioned molecules. So what is a molecule? A molecule are compounds of atoms held together by covalent bonds. Example for this is the two hydrogen atoms to form hydrogen molecules. So a molecule may be homonuclear from the word itself, homo, which means consist of atoms of one chemical element only, as with oxygen or O2. Or it may be heteronuclear, which is a chemical compound composed of more than one element, as with water, H2O. So let's proceed to the two types of compounds. What are these two types of compounds? So these are the organic compounds and the inorganic compounds. Basically, organic compounds contain carbon while inorganic compounds do not contain carbon. Take note that organic compounds are characterized by the presence of carbon atoms. It is said to be more volatile and also highly inflammable. Inorganic compounds are primarily those that do not contain carbon. The exemption is carbon dioxide. Water and minerals are both inorganic. Living things contain a great many inorganic compounds, and the compounds that make up bones and form salts are inorganic. So the compounds of life. The four groups of organic compounds found in living things are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and the nucleic acids. So what is a carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are the short-term energy storage. It is converted to glucose quickly. Glucose is used to make adenosine triphosphate. So next to this is lipids. Lipids can be more formally defined as substances such as a fat, oil, or wax that dissolves in alcohol but not in water. These contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen but have far less oxygen proportionally than carbohydrates. Next to this is proteins. They are one of the building blocks of body tissue and can also serve as a fuel source. This is essential nutrients for the human body. For the nucleic acid, these are the important class of macromolecules found in all cells and viruses, the DNA and RNA. Let's proceed to hydrogen bonds. The polar molecules have a positive end and a negative end. Hydrogen bond form when positive end of one polar molecule is weakly attracted to negative end of another polar molecule. The attraction between molecules is much weaker than in ionic or covalent bond. We have cohesion that is related to hydrogen bonding that causes the molecules to stick together. It is a much stronger for water than other liquids. This is useful to plants that depend upon cohesion to help transport water and nutrients. Hydrogen bonds are responsible for surface tension. What is a surface tension? This is a measure of how difficult it is to break the surface of a liquid. Because of hydrogen bonding, the water has a greater ability to resist temperature change than other liquids. So let's define surface tension. Surface tension is what allows objects with a higher density than water, such as razor blades and insects, to float on a water surface. So here is an example, a strider on a water surface. So we have here the heat and temperature. Heat is the energy associated with movement, while temperature is the measure of the intensity of heat. Basically, water can exist as gas, liquid, and solid. Water is less dense as a solid, a property due to hydrogen bonding. Take note that its versatility results from its polarity. Take note that ice is less dense than water, so it floats. A solution is liquid consisting of a uniform mixture of two or more substances. The dissolving agent is what we call solvent, while the substance that is dissolved is the solute. Water is a versatile solvent that is the fundamental to life processes. Table salt is an example of a solute that will go into solution in water. Here is the example. A few water molecules can break apart into ions. Some are hydrogen ions, some are hydroxide ions. Both are extremely reactive. A balance between the two is critical for chemical processes to occur in living organisms. Take note that the chemistry of life is sensitive to acidic and basic conditions. These chemicals, other than water, can contribute H+ to a solution. These chemicals are called acids. Just for example, hydrochloric acid. In definition, acid is a sour substance, specifically any of various typically water-soluble and sour compounds that in solution are capable of. This has a strong acid pH of 1 to 3. On the other hand, bases contains lots of OH ions and fewer H+ ions. Strong bases has a pH level of 11 to 14. As you can see here, this is the pH scale and the pH values of various aqueous solutions. To capsulize the idea, acids taste sour. It reacts with some metals to give off hydrogen gas, and it also conducts electricity in a solution, while bases taste bitter, feel slippery, and it dissolves in fats and oils. And finally, we have buffers. These are the weak acids or bases that reacts with strong acids or bases to prevent the sharp sudden changes in pH. pH is a potential level of hydrogen. So that ends our lessons for the chemical basis of life. Thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye!